The spotlight in the Los Angeles fashion scene had never shone brighter than it did that evening, as Katie Logan Spencer prepared to reveal her ambitious new enterprise. After years of navigating the shadows of her family's past and the towering presence of Forrester Creations, Katie thought she had finally pushed ahead with something entirely her own. Her new design brand, Logan, was a bold statement of independence, a chance to carve out a space where her vision could bloom without the frequent comparisons to her sister Brooke or the complex family dynamics that had characterized so much of her existence. The arena was alive with expectation, with lights glinting off polished runways, photographers pushing for ideal spots, and industry insiders muttering speculations about whether this launch would genuinely shatter the current order ruled by Forrester Designs. Katie strolled through the backstage commotion with the quiet determination that she had developed over months of preparation. She tweaked a model's drape here, offered subtle encouragement there, her gaze sharp and focused. Bill Spencer remained nearby, his presence a constant anchor, delivering nods of approbation and the occasional reassuring grip on her hand. He had invested deeply in this project, not only financially but also emotionally, seeing in Katie a strength that had hitherto been underestimated. The collection itself was inspired by traditional elegance with a modern twist, flowing silks in deep jewel tones, precise tailoring softened by surprising asymmetry, and pieces that whispered luxury while yelling confidence. Eric Forrester's earlier involvement had given it a sheen that even critics couldn't refute, but Katie had made certain to incorporate her own sensibility into every seam and thread. As the lights darkened and the music became louder, the first model walked out, commanding the runway with flawless grace. Applause echoed across the audience, growing with each subsequent sight. Katie watched from the wings, her heart beating, a faint smile breaking through her calm demeanor. This was her moment, the culmination of strength formed through heartache, health crises, and the never-ending tug of familial loyalty. She had envisioned this night as a victory, a declaration that she was more than Brooke's younger sister, Bill's companion, and a supporting character in the never-ending drama of Los Angeles high society. Then, midway through the show, there was a subtle shift. Two familiar figures, Brooke Logan Forrester and Ridge Forrester, came at the door, drawing everyone's attention. Their attendance was not wholly unexpected. Invitations had been widely distributed, and the Logan Forrester links were too strong to ignore. However, their expressions conveyed more than just polite attention. Brooke's expression was a mix of concern and something sharper, while Ridge's jaw was set in that familiar line of resolve that generally meant problems for anyone standing in his way. They did not take their seats in the front row discreetly. Instead, they lingered to the side, exchanging telling glances before approaching the area where Katie could see them plainly. The models continued their procession, but the energy in the room shifted subtly. Whispers spread like ripples on water. Brooke moved in to talk to Ridge, her voice quiet but urgent, and he nodded, his gaze riveted on the runway, as if he were inspecting each garment for flaws, or perhaps for traces of his father's unmistakable work. Katie noticed them and felt a sense of discomfort. She had hoped for support, or at least neutrality, but the tension between her sister and brother-in-law was palpable. As the final look approached, Katie walked out momentarily to acknowledge the audience, her voice solid on the microphone. She praised her team, investors, and visionaries who had believed in Logan from the beginning. The applause grew louder and more fervent. However, before she could fully escape backstage, Brooke and Ridge advanced, positioning themselves in a way that grabbed every eye in the room. What transpired next took only seconds but seemed like a lifetime. Brooke spoke first, her voice booming over the suddenly quiet area. Ridge chimed in, his remarks measured yet sharp. They issued a statement that landed like a thunderclap, 7 words encapsulating accusation, betrayal, and unwavering opposition. "You stole our name and our designs." The phrase hung in the air, sharp and obvious, piercing through the lingering ovation and leaving stunned stillness. Gasps rippled across the audience, phones were raised to catch the moment, and camera flashes intensified as if the actual performance had just begun. Katie froze, her face paling in the light. She had expected criticism, Even legal challenges whispered in boardrooms, but not this public conflict, not now. Bill came forward instinctively, his protective instincts heightened, but Katie lifted her hand to stop him. She met Brooke's eyes straight, looking for the sister who had once consoled her through illness and sorrow, but all she found was determination sharpened by years of rivalry and perceived slights. Ridge stood next to Brooke, arms crossed, his expression one of righteous wrath. To him, this was more than simply a name. It was about legacy, about Eric's creations being reused without full Forrester approval, and about the family enterprise he had fought to safeguard on numerous occasions. The audience muttered, some surprised, some interested by the raw family drama spilling out onto what should have been a professional stage. Katie's thoughts raced. She had officially trademarked Logan, based on her own Logan daughter heritage. Yes, Eric's influence was evident in the drawings, but partnerships had been considered, even if emotions had worsened later. To have it labeled as theft in front of industry peers felt like a planned strike, aimed to undercut her reputation before Logan could really establish itself. Brooke's eyes glistened slightly, either from sorrow or fury over Katie's overreach. She had always been the golden child, the one whose name conjured up images of passion, perfume, and countless romantic entanglements, as well as the one who demanded attention in the fashion industry through Forrester creations. Katie claiming Logan as a brand felt like an erasure, a radical take on something Brooke had helped define over decades of prominence. Ridge, who was always protective of his family's creative legacy, saw the use of Eric's aesthetic as exploitative, especially now that Eric had recommitted to Forrester. Katie regained her control and responded, her voice calm despite the tremble beneath it. She reminded them, and the audience, that Logan was also her inheritance, that she had every right to expand on it, and that her collaborations with Eric had been reciprocal until personal difficulties arose. But the harm had been done. The 7 words had irrevocably altered the story. What should have been a celebration of new beginnings devolved into a display of sibling conflict, with Brooke and Ridge cast as traditionalists opposing Katie's push for independence. Backstage, the atmosphere buzzed with fallout. Models muttered in corners, publicists rushed to control the media frenzy, and Katie went to a quiet corner, Bill by her side, delivering muted fury on her behalf. Brooke approached gingerly, perhaps hoping for a private reunion, but Katie turned away, the pain still raw. Ridge lingered nearby, his attitude firm, sure he had defended what was most important. The incident had a ripple effect on the industry in the days that followed. Headlines blared about family feuds erupting at fashion shows, analysts argued the legal ramifications of the name and design claims, and followers of the long-running tale scrutinized every detail. Katie reaffirmed her vision, declaring that Logan would emerge stronger from the ashes of his public humiliation. Brooke and Ridge returned to Forrester Creations, their bond strengthened by the joint battle, but flaws in their private relationship remained beneath the surface. The 7 words became famous in their own right, symbolizing the time when sisterly connections were tested to the breaking point by ambition, legacy, and the brutal glare of the limelight. Katie's fashion show, which was supposed to symbolize her emergence as a force in her own right, instead became inscribed into Logan family history as the night Brooke and Ridge appeared and spoke those heartbreaking 7 words that changed everything. However, in the world of soap operas and high-stakes fashion, where love, betrayal, and reinvention mix on a daily basis, this wound may one day heal, or drive the next dramatic episode. For the time being, the runway lights were dimmed, but the drama they lit was as bright as ever. Katie's fashion show was supposed to be elegant, joyful, and full of the glamour that typically accompanies a large Forrester event. The lights shimmered across the runway, reflecting off meticulously created textiles and exquisite accessories that had taken months to create. Models waited backstage, stylists scurried about making last-minute changes, while attendees whispered excitedly about the next designs. Katie had poured her heart and soul into preparing the event, hoping it would remind everyone of the Forrester legacy's enduring strength. She wanted the event to represent unity, innovation, and a new beginning for all involved. But beneath the polished surface of the night, Emotions were seething that no one could completely ignore. Brooke entered with Ridge, and their presence alone caused several heads to turn. They had long been one of the most talked-about couples in the fashion industry, attracting attention wherever they went. Some visitors smiled warmly, while others observed with silent interest, wondering if the evening would offer more drama than they expected. After all, the relationship between Brooke, Ridge, and the rest of the Forrester family had never been easy. Katie spotted them very immediately. She had been standing near the front of the runway, greeting people and ensuring that everything was in order. When she saw Brooke and Ridge walking toward her, she felt a mix of relief and tense anticipation. Their presence could draw favorable attention to the play, but it could also spark conversations that changed the vibe of the evening. However, Katie smiled brightly as they approached. "I'm glad you both made it," she replied, hugging Brooke first, then turning to Ridge. Brooke smiled back, but her look was contemplative. Ridge, who stood next to her, glanced around the area with a keen eye, taking in every aspect. "You've done an incredible job," Brooke stated truthfully. "Everything looks amazing." Katie appreciated the comment. She had worked so hard to make the show flawless, so hearing that from Brooke meant a lot. But she could tell Brooke and Ridge had not come solely to admire the designs. They had something they wanted to express. Katie leaned in closer as additional people took their seats, and the show's music began to play. "You seem to have something on your mind," she replied gently. Ridge shared a quick glance with Brooke. For a period, neither of them spoke. The crowd's noise filled the area surrounding them, and the excitement of the concert generated an almost electric hum. Ridge finally spoke. "We came to support you," he explained initially. Katie nodded, thankful for that. But she felt there was more. Brooke put a soothing hand on Katie's arm. What happened next would astonish her. "We need to talk after this," Brooke replied gently. 7 simple words, but the tone behind them carried weight. Katie blinked, caught off surprise. Those 7 words immediately prompted a dozen questions in her head. Brooke and Ridge had selected a certain moment to say them, and Katie couldn't help but wonder what kind of talk they were hoping to have. Was it about family? What about the company? Or something much more personal? Before Katie could raise another question, the show coordinator approached, signaling that the runway presentation was ready to begin. Guests were seated, photographers were taking their positions, and models were getting ready for their first walk. Katie forced herself to concentrate. "Let's enjoy the show first," she added with a smile. Brooke and Ridge agreed, taking their seats among the other attendees. As the lights dropped and the music began, the first model walked down the catwalk in a stunning gown that received immediate applause. For a few seconds, everyone allowed themselves to be completely lost in the event's artistry. Katie happily watched each design make its way down the runway. The textiles flowed smoothly, the colors merged seamlessly, and the crowd reacted with admiration. It was the exact response she had hoped for. But as she celebrated the show's success, her thoughts kept returning to Brooke's words. "We need to speak after this." The phrase resounded in her head repeatedly. Throughout the show, she cast several glances at Brooke and Ridge. They appeared to be immersed in the presentation, occasionally whispering to one another or applauding the designs. However, Katie noted that Ridge was abnormally serious. Brooke also seemed thoughtful. Whatever they wanted to talk about was plainly not casual. As the show progressed, other members of the Forrester circle became aware of the underlying tension. Some speculated about the possibility of a significant announcement. Others speculated that past disputes would reappear. Everyone associated with the Forrester brand had a tangled history, and even the most beautiful event could rapidly turn into a source of emotional conflict. Still, the runway ran flawlessly. The show's last portion showcased a dramatic assortment of evening gowns, which received great ovation. When the final model went down the catwalk, the audience rose to their feet in admiration. Katie felt overcome with pride. She took a step forward to thank everyone for coming and to recognize the great staff who worked so hard to put on the event. Cameras flashed as she spoke, recording the moment when months of hard work finally paid off. When the acclaim subsided and the guests resumed mingling, Brooke and Ridge approached her. Katie took a big breath. She realized the moment had arrived. Brooke smiled lightly, but her countenance maintained the same profound intensity. "You were amazing," Brooke informed her. "And the designs were stunning," Ridge said. Katie sincerely thanked them, but kept the talk on track. "You said we needed to talk," she reminded them. Brooke cast a short glance at the gathering that around them. "This might not be the best place," she explained. Katie considered it. The room was packed with guests, photographers, and industry insiders. Any impassioned discourse would rapidly become the focus of attention. She nodded. "Let's go somewhere quieter." The three of them approached a private lounge area away from the main event room. The music and chatter faded slightly as the door shut behind them. For a moment, no one spoke. Katie examined their faces intently. "Okay," she replied softly. "What is going on?" Ridge took a breath. "This isn't easy to say," he conceded. Brooke softly placed her hand over his. "We didn't want a night to be overshadowed," she explained. "That's why we waited until the show is over." Katie's interest turned to concern. "Just tell me," she said. Ridge finally glanced directly at her. "Changes are coming," he said. Katie frowned slightly. "Changes?" Brooke nodded. "Within the family, within the company, possibly in all of our lives." The words fell hard in the quiet chamber. Katie felt a flood of uncertainty wash over her. Forrester Creations had already had numerous changes in leadership, relationships, and alliances throughout the years. Hearing that additional changes could be on the way made her nervous. "What types of changes?" she asked. Brooke and Ridge exchanged another glance. They had clearly discussed this moment before attending the fashion show. Brooke spoke first. "We've been thinking a lot about the future," she explained gently. "The future of the company," Ridge added. "And the future of our family." Katie listened intently. She had a feeling that whatever they were about to say would have ramifications for everyone involved. "We don't want secrets anymore," Brooke added. "That's why we decided to be honest," Ridge explained. Katie crossed her arms gently to brace herself. "Honest about what?" Ridge breathed slowly. "There are some decisions we've been debating for a while." Brooke nodded. "And tonight felt like the right time to start sharing them." Katie felt the tension rise again. The night had begun as a celebration of innovation and achievement, but it was gradually becoming into something far more challenging. Outside the lounge, visitors continued to discuss the fashion display, ignorant of the serious debate taking place behind closed doors. Inside the room, the air was thick with expectancy. Katie looked from Brooke to Ridge. "Whatever it is," she replied, "I'd rather hear it now than spend the whole night wondering." Brooke smiled sympathetically. "You deserve to know the truth," she explained. Ridge moved forward somewhat. "And we trust you," he added. Katie appreciated it, but it did not ease her anxiety. "Then please," she replied softly, "tell me." Ridge appeared to hesitate again, but Brooke softly grabbed his hand to encourage him. The decision was already made. "We're thinking about stepping back," Ridge finally said. Katie's eyes widened. "Taking a step back from what?" "From the ongoing battles," Brooke explained. "From the endless drama that keeps pulling our family apart." Ridge was nodding. "And possibly from some of our roles at the company." Katie glanced at them, stunned. That wasn't what she expected to hear. "Are you serious?" she asked. Brooke nodded quietly. "We want a different kind of future." Katie leaned back slightly, attempting to grasp the concept. Ridge's departure from the organization might impact everything. Forrester Creations had always been influenced by his presence, vision, and leadership. The concept of separating himself from that role seemed almost impossible. "But why now?" Katie inquired. Ridge seemed thoughtful. "Because we've realized something important," he was saying. Brooke completed the thought. "Life is too short to keep having the same arguments." Katie recognized that feeling, but she also knew how much Ridge cared about the business. "That's a huge decision," she stated cautiously. "We know," Brooke responded. "That's why we're talking to you first," Ridge explained. Katie felt honored and overwhelmed. There were still plenty of unsolved questions. "What will happen next?" she asked. Ridge gazed at Brooke again. Then he turned back to Katie. "That's something we're still working out." Brooke smiled warmly. "But tonight," she explained, "we just wanted to be honest about how we're feeling." Katie nodded slowly. The talk had taken an unexpected turn, but she could sense the sincerity in their remarks. Outside, the fashion show celebrations continued, but within the club, something different was happening. One that could potentially impact the futures of everyone associated with the Forrester name. And as Katie glanced at Brooke and Ridge, she realized that the 7 simple words they had said earlier were only the start of a much bigger story.